Hello, everyone. Finlay is the founder of Chocolates of Glenshiel, which is just across the water from SWI. And he founded that when he was only 16. So he's a young entrepreneur. So I'll pass over to him and he can crack on and show you what he's going to do tonight.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. It's very exciting to be with you. I've never done an online cook-along before, so I'm really excited. Let's hope it doesn't go disastrously wrong. I'm sure it won't. So like Charlotte said, I started this when I was only young, but my love of food started a way back when my granny Valerie, I think it was from the age of 1.5, 1 3/4. So basically, as soon as I could stand up on a stool and reach the worktop, we would go over to hers on a Sunday afternoon and she would bake scones with me. And I really loved my granny. My other granny, my granny Vera, baked chocolate cakes whenever it was a birthday with me. And then my great auntie Elspeth we would go on holiday to see her, and whenever I was across seeing her, she would, do you know those like box kits you can get, that fairy cake?
Oh yeah.
Like builder ones, and it was all very exciting at the time. So whenever we went to see Auntie Elspeth, she would buy one of those boxes and we'd go over and make fairy cakes. But I loved all my grannies. Auntie Elspeth was a great aunt, but I called her a granny. And because my grannies always did baking with me, I kind of grew up loving that process of baking or cooking. So I've always been obsessed with food because of that. And whenever anyone asks me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would just say something to do with food, something with food. And then when I was 14 years old, I was doing a little bit of work experience in this pastry kitchen. And on the last day, I'd done my last day, but they mentioned that the day after I was leaving, they were going to be making chocolates. And I was like, oh my goodness, how on earth do you, because I just thought of chocolates as something that you bought, milk tray out of Tesco's. That's how chocolates come, isn't it? And they all have the fillings in them already. How do you get the fillings inside? How does it work? So I said, please, can I come and learn how to make chocolates with you tomorrow? I've never been shy. So even as a 14-year-old, I was willing to beg, please, can I come and learn how to make chocolates? So they very kindly said, yes, that would be all right. So I went and did my 2 hours work experience there. Just learned the very basics. It was literally 2 hours that I had. So I only had a wee taste of it. But then I went away and bought a chocolate mold and a bag of chocolate, and watched an awful lot of YouTube. The fantastic thing for learning, just Googling how to make chocolates, and practiced and slowly got better at it. I grew up here in Glenshiel. I was hoping you would, sorry, wrong side, this side. I was hoping you'd be able to see the beautiful Glenshiel out this window, but the sun's coming in now. So it's just a white, but Glenshiel is beautiful. We've got the Five Sisters of Kintail, the mountains out that way. We've got Loch Duich with Donnan Castle on it. I grew up in this place, didn't really appreciate it whilst I was growing up. But when I left high school, I had a place to go off to university, but I just fell in love with home. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be able to stay here, not just how beautiful it was. I started dating my now wife, Heather, who's from Glasgow, and she would come up here on holiday and go, I can't believe you actually live here. This is like a fairy tale place. How come you get to live here? I was like, oh yeah, it's actually quite nice, isn't it? But not just the physical beauty of the place. I love the community. I love how supportive everyone was, and the fishbowl isn't for everyone. But I love knowing everyone's business and everyone knowing me. And when I can't get round the co-op locally in less than half an hour, because yesterday I bumped into my old primary school teacher, and I bumped into a friend from school, and I bumped into a friend's mum from school. I love that. I love how close-knit the community is. So I thought, if I could make a living from, I'd been making chocolate since I was 14, I'd been selling it at my school's Christmas fair, but if I could make a living from that, then I'd get to stay here in the place that I love. There aren't many jobs in Glenshiel. You can work on the salmon fish farm, you can work in the pub, you can work on the ferry. That's about it. And I really wanted to do something with food that wasn't salmon farming. So I thought if I could make a living from selling chocolates, that would be amazing. So I started out of a wee kitchen at the side of mum and dad's house 6-7 years ago now. And I'm standing today in our lovely visitor centre that we have on the main road next to SWI. We moved here 2 years ago in 2021. We've got a team of 17 people working with us now, lots of them young people from the area, most of whom have actually moved away and come back to work here. So they always wanted to move home, but didn't want to do the ferry or the fish farm. The ferry and the fish farm are lovely places to work, by the way. I feel like I'm doing them down. But it wasn't for them, whereas they thought making chocolates, I can do that. So we've got a fantastic wee team in this amazing place. And I am about to make some salted caramel, by the way, don't worry. Lastly, I didn't want to just make the same chocolates that you would find anywhere else. I wanted them to be not just made in Glenshiel, I wanted them to be rooted in the area. I wanted to be able to showcase that love that I had for my area, that I didn't want to move, the love that I had for this place in the chocolates. So this, wrong side again. This lovely map here is a wee sort of just taster of all the different ingredients that we use. So every single one of our chocolate products has something that roots it in the area, or at least in Scotland. So for example, there's some just there. For our beautiful tart Scottish raspberries, they don't grow so well on the West Coast. So we go down to Blairgowrie for them. Same for our honey, but we've got local whiskies, local gins. We use the sea salt from SWI, locally roasted coffee, just any Scottish ingredients that we can get our hands on and showcase in chocolate. So we're taking the produce from the area and showcasing it in chocolate, so that it's something you can't get anywhere else, because it's of this place. So we're selling in Selfridges and the National Trust, from our visitor centre here. We do lots of sales online, going really well so far. I always say so far to people, because I know how blessed I've been. I definitely couldn't have got this far without support from my lovely family, from my grannies. Yeah, people always ask, are we a family business? And no, we're not, but a lot of my family do work in the business. So we're about 50-50 split between the 17 people, are about 50-50 split between people who are related to me and people who aren't. Yeah, that's me. So today I was trying to think what's best, that I know not everyone's going to be cooking long, but if you wanted to be able to cook long, what could we do, and what's something that would be helpful and interesting and useful to learn. So we're going to be making salted caramel with you this afternoon. Salted caramel's a real craze. It's fantastic, but it's also very versatile. So this same recipe that we're doing with you today, you could take out the salt and have it just as a basic caramel. You could swap out the cream for whiskey and have it as a whiskey caramel. You could swap out the cream for a fruit puree and make it a passion fruit caramel, or we've just done for our autumn selection, not autumn, we're not in autumn yet, summer selection. We've just made a lovely pear caramel by using the same recipe, but substituting the cream for a pear puree. So I hope this is going to be helpful for you. I was thinking of trying to set up 2 cameras and look very professional. But actually anyone who knows me knows that professionalism is not the first word you would put to my name. So we've got a classic webcam, and I'm just going to move you, if that's all right. So this is my lovely pan here. So we're going to take this and add to it These are great, by the way. These are just, we plug in induction hobs. They're so handy. So I've got 150 grams of lovely Scottish butter here. Here we go. And to that, I'm going to add my 150 grams of soft brown sugar. And we're going to add, this is our lovely sea salt from Skye. Now sorry, this is going to be very clunky. There we go. So the sea salt from Skye is actually made, it's along the shore. It's a couple called Chris and Mina. So they spent their life making this sea salt. So they've got polytunnels that line the shore on Skye, and they take this water from the sea, pump it into the polytunnels, and then just leave the sun to evaporate off the water. But really cool. We're going up to see it next month, and I'm really excited to just be able to harvest such a natural product of Skye. And it sounds a bit ridiculous to say you can have a delicious salt, but actually, if you taste it alongside other salts, it's much sweeter, not as harsh. And while normal salt is just sodium chloride, the sea salt from Skye actually has over 80 different salts in it because it's not been refined. They've just taken whatever salts are in the sea. I don't think we said at the beginning, if you have any questions, just to shoot them into the chat box. And Pauline and Charlotte have very kindly agreed to monitor that and pop questions to you if we ever reach any lull.
Yeah. So we have one actually, Finlay, already. Yeah. So Val Innes has asked, have you ever tried using local salmon in your chocolate, or is that a step too far?
I have not tried using local salmon yet. I'm trying to think how we could do that. You probably want a very, very bitter dark chocolate, and maybe with like, it would have to be a like make it and eat it that same day. Very thin layer of a bitter dark chocolate, maybe some cream cheese, maybe some smoked salmon. Would be an interesting one.
Is it possible to cold smoke chocolate?
I don't think so. I've never tried it.
There's cold smoked butter, and which does my head in. You know, it's like, wow, how do you do that? But it's just that the flavour infuses into the butter, doesn't it? So could you do it that way?
Yeah.
Or is chocolate too solid to do that? You know what I mean?
I think so, but we should try it. Why not?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking this way because my screen's this way now.
Yeah. So how much salt? That's the next question. 3 people have asked, how much salt did you add there?
Oh, good question.
We do have the recipe, guys. I'll put the recipe into the chat box, the link for the recipe and what you'll need into the chat box. So this
was 12 grams of sea salt. We actually use probably, we make it a really salty. I love when you can actually taste the salt in the caramel, but it actually depends on the sea salt you're using. So the sea salt from Skye is much saltier than other salts. So it's something that you want to just like keep tasting as you go along.
Because you can put salt in, but you can't take it out, can you?
Very wise lesson. So if you want to have another look into my pan here, this has come together lovely. So initially we had the butter was all greasy and separate from the sugar, but now it's emulsified into this lovely silky smooth. And to that, I'm going to add my 150 mils of double cream. I'm switching off the heat just there.
Oh, Will's cooking along at home. He says, cooking along at home, what heat should the hob be?
So I'm always quite impatient, so I probably put it on much hotter than I should do. But so just a medium to high heat initially, and then once you've got it emulsified together, just switch it off. But yeah, if you were to ask me how hot the hob should be anytime, I just go maximum, and as long as you're keeping a close eye on it, generally that's okay. So you can see that's made it much more liquid. And then lastly, this is just depending on what kind of set you want your salted caramel to have. So we're adding just 60 grams of chocolate. And what that's going to do is, as well as the butter setting, as the caramel cools down, this chocolate will set and mean that the caramel is thicker. So that we're aiming for that. I'll take you up to look at me again as I badly demonstrate this. We're aiming for when you bite it in.
Yes.
So we don't want it to just pour out all over you. We kind of want that like teeth mark state of caramel. So it's soft, it's gooey, but just leaving like teeth mark imprint.
Yeah, and you can use milk or dark chocolate. You've got in your recipe, you've got 60 grams of milk or dark chocolate for the whole chocolate. So how much did you put into the pan there?
So this in the pan was just 60 grams of chocolate.
Right, great,
so the recipe is just for the caramel filling.
Yeah.
So that's 60 grams of chocolate. But again, if you want a firmer set caramel, you can increase that, and you can leave it out altogether if you don't want it too thick. We've just been working on a lovely collaboration with one of our local distilleries. We've just done a whiskey caramel chocolate for them. Fantastic. So just substituting out that cream for, it's one of the Talisker whiskies that we've used for that. But it's gorgeous. And we had, when we were making it, we had a wee bit left over in production, and the kitchen for our cafe is just over there. So it went next door, and Catherine had just made a lovely chocolate cake. So we just did a simple chocolate cake with that whiskey caramel poured over.
Lovely.
Delicious.
And Talisker's quite a peaty whiskey, isn't it? Yeah. So it would have been very full flavored. Yeah.
Absolutely. But the wonderful thing about using all these things with chocolate, so whiskey is so harsh on its own. Yes. But the sweetness from the chocolate just mellows it slightly. Who doesn't like chocolate? No. Hopefully none of you. If you've signed up for it.
I think we're all chocolate fans. I can safely say that probably everyone on here is a chocolate fan. So we have Michelle from America. She said, "What is double cream?" Because Americans don't have double cream. So that's full cream, yeah.
Yes. So you just want to find the cream with as much fat in it as possible. So I actually was doing some baking in the States a couple of months ago, and was really struggling to find an equivalent to double cream. The Americans love cream and coffee all the time, but trying to find cream that's got double cream is just really thick cream. Yes, find your thickest cream possible.
Yeah, and it's a heavy whipping cream here in the UK, in the USA, says Kay. So there's a few Americans on tonight. That's exciting. Does it make a difference? Lindsay Spender is asking, does it make a difference what percentage chocolate it is? So does it have to be a really high percentage chocolate, or?
No, absolutely. So this is one of my bugbears, if you like, about the chocolate industry. We've all come very orientated around that cocoa percentage. So you hear lots of chefs talking about 70% or darker dark chocolate, 70% more. And that, when you're buying chocolate in the supermarket, actually is normally a very good indicator of the quality of chocolate. So what we want is chocolate that has lots of cocoa butter in it and lots of cocoa mass in it. In order to make a cheaper chocolate, you would take away some of this cocoa butter and some of this cocoa mass and replace it with vegetable oils and things like that. So 70% normally is a good indicator of the quality of chocolate, but it's entirely possible to have a really fine, delicious chocolate that uses less than 70% cocoa mass, as long as you're replacing that cocoa mass with cocoa butter Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. So yeah. You
So
just get the right amount of cocoa in it.
yes, yeah. Most of the dark chocolate that we use is a 70.5%. We also use a 54% occasionally if we want something slightly sweeter. That would be, so we've just done a raspberry chocolate for our summer selection as well. But because we're using freeze-dried raspberries, so they're really tart. So that it's all about balance. You want that balance of sweetness. So we've gone for a slightly sweeter dark chocolate to complement that.
Yeah, lovely. Well explained. That's good.
Thank you very much.
I worked with a few chefs before, and they used to use Valrhona chocolate. Do you know Valrhona? It's very bitter, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's the two sort of huge chocolate brands in the world that are best renowned are Valrhona and Callebaut. So although our chocolates are all focused around using Scottish ingredients, the most common question I get asked is the chocolate Scottish? And no, it is not. We use chocolate that's mostly made in Oxford by a company called Stewart & Arnold. So they make us a fantastic quality chocolate, and then we work with it, temper it, which we're going to go on to discuss. Tempering is not an easy process. We temper it and make all sorts of different fillings with our Scottish ingredients.
Great. And thankfully, Michelle has said Amazon has British double cream, so she's sorted. So that's good.
Excellent. Music to my...
Hooray for Amazon.
Will I talk a wee bit about tempering chocolate?
Yeah. Explain what tempering is, because does that mean the chocolate's angry? What is it?
Temper it. So tempered chocolate is just a state of chocolate. So tempered chocolate will be normally how you buy chocolate. So if you buy a bar of chocolate from the shop, as long as it's not got too warm in the car on the way home, it will be in temper. But as soon as it goes over kind of 30 degrees again, it's going to get out of temper. So a nice tempered chocolate is when all the cocoa butter inside the chocolate is sitting nice and uniformly and orderly. And that gives you 4 characteristics. So tempered chocolate has 4 characteristics. It will have a lovely shine. I don't know if you've ever sort of opened a box of fancy chocolates and just seen all the shimmering, the light reflecting off it. That's partly to do with a nicely polished mold, but also to do with well-tempered chocolate. So it's got that lovely shine. Tempered chocolate will have that lovely, I think this may be my favorite characteristic of tempered chocolate, that lovely snap.
Yeah, snap's great.
You've got a bar of chocolate and you give it that click. That's always a good indicator of how much cocoa butter is in your chocolate, because it's that chocolate, that cocoa butter sitting uniformly that gives it that lovely snap. Tempered chocolate will retract slightly as it sets. So as the chocolate cools down, if the cocoa butter is sitting nice and uniformly, it will shrink slightly as it sets. So that means that your chocolate will come out the mold. Here's a mold that I've got. So this is a good sign that the mold I'm using later on is in temper, because I was able just to pull the shell out there. So it must be in temper. The molds we use are completely rigid. So if your chocolate is not in temper, you are in trouble. So it won't come out the mold. So it's got a lovely shine, a lovely snap. It retracts slightly, and it also means that it won't melt at room temperature. So if your chocolate's not in temper, I didn't plan this, but we've got some lovely chocolate that's been poured out on the table that isn't in temper. It's a big piece of chocolate. This is chocolate. This is set, but because it's not in temper, it's very bendy.
So it should be flat, and you should be able to break it. And you couldn't break that, so
No. So that's when we've been emptying the machine at the end of the day, and we've had to heat the chocolate up to 45 degrees just to get it all out. But we'll be able to melt that down and retemper it and use it again tomorrow.
Well, that's an important thing then. So it's a malleable thing that you can use again, yeah?
Yeah.
And it
So-
doesn't lose any of its property, no.
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 If chocolate's bloomed, that's when it gets like that.
The white,
chocolate.
yeah, go on. Here's one I made earlier.
Here we go. So if you have this lovely bloom,
Yes.
which is very pretty sometimes, but not what we want on our chocolate bars, that can always be melted down and re-tempered.
Yeah. Great, even when it's got a bloom, because I thought when it had a bloom it was off, but it's not.
No.
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 Okay, that's great.
Melted
That's
down.
great.
So a bloom is generally a sign of it starting to deteriorate as
Yeah.
well. But you can re-temper it and it will give it a wee couple of extra months.
Yeah, and how long does chocolate last then, Finlay?
So generally, it's always better the fresher it is.
Yeah.
All these ingredients that we think are non-perishable are actually always much nicer the fresher they are.
Yeah.
So always eat it as soon as you can, but it will last for 13, 14 months, generally, as long as it's kept at a stable temperature.
Yeah.
So people often ask, should I put my chocolate in the fridge? As long as your room temperature isn't too far above 22 degrees, it should be fine, just as in a cool, dark place, away from direct sunlight.
And other people that might eat it, yeah. Yeah.
Very risky.
Now we have a question, Finlay. Are you leaving the caramel to cool off on the hob at the moment? What's happening there? Do you take it off the heat?
It would be much faster if I poured it out into another bowl
Right.
and left it to cool it off there. But it doesn't hurt being in the hob. It'll just take longer to cool down.
Yeah, yeah. So if Michael is cooking along, then he could take his off the hob or put it into a bowl.
Pour it into a bowl.
Pour it into a bowl.
That'll be ready to use later on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So we've looked at what tempered chocolate actually is. How do you do it? So there are 3 different ways that require different levels of skill and confidence. So if you're feeling really confident, really risky, you can try and melt down your chocolate without taking it above, for dark 32, for milk 30 degrees, and for white 29 degrees. So if you can take your chocolate and melt it without taking it above that temperature, the chocolate should still be in temper. Now, this is definitely the most risky method. We don't use that method at all, but if you manage to melt it down and not take it above that temperature, your chocolate will still be in temper, because all the cocoa butter, even though the chocolate's liquid, the cocoa butter will be nice and uniformly set in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so tell me those numbers again, and then I'll just put them in the chat so everyone's got them.
Dark chocolate 32,
Yep.
milk chocolate 30,
3. Yep, and white.
white chocolate 29.
Great. And that's
So
degrees Celsius, I take it?
Yes,
Yeah.
degrees Celsius. So that's because white chocolate has the most cocoa butter and the least cocoa mass,
Mhm.
whereas dark chocolate has the most cocoa mass and the least cocoa butter. So you can get away with a slightly higher temperature whilst ensuring all the cocoa butter is uniformly set.
Yeah.
So that's method number 1. That's your very risky method. Method number 2 is temperature. So if you have no other chocolate in the house, this is your only chocolate, you don't have any more chocolate that's already in temper, you will need to use the temperature method. So this is the most beautiful method. You've maybe seen shows where they've got a big marble top and all the chocolatiers are scraping the chocolate around it. So in order to do this method, you want to heat all of your chocolate up to 45 degrees. So 45 is your lovely temperature where all the cocoa butter will be completely melted. So it's not sitting uniformly anymore, it's just liquid.
Yeah.
So heat up to 45, and then you want to take a third of the chocolate out of it and cool that chocolate down to 27 degrees. So that is gonna mean that that chocolate is in temper. And then you want to add your 27-degree chocolate back into your big basin of chocolate. And that should cool it all to around those numbers that I gave earlier, 29, 30, 32. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you could move it around on a lovely marble slab if you have that at your home, but you can also just mix it really well in a bowl until it's down to 27 degrees, or if you have a metal table, or yeah, as long as you're cooling down that third to 27 degrees and adding it back in. And you want to make sure that your chocolate is now at that 32, 30, 29. If it's not, just tip out a third again and cool it down again.
Right, okay. Yeah, great.
That's number 2, it's your temperature method. Number 3 is called the seeding method. So this is the one that this is the best one in my opinion. If you're tempering chocolate at home, this is the most foolproof, easiest one to go for. So with this one, you want to heat up 2/3 of your chocolate to 45 degrees. I'll stick this one in the microwave and see if we can do it along with you.
Great. So is this you actually starting the chocolate? It's just for people who are making along at home. Is this you starting to make the chocolate for the
yes,
chef?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So if you're making chocolates with me, congratulations to you. That's very exciting. So you want to take 2/3 of your chocolate and melt it down. When you're tempering chocolate, it's always best to work with more than you need.
So how much would you make for say you wanted to make 20? I'd imagine I could probably eat 20 chocolates in a setting, yeah. But say you want to make 20 chocolates, how much chocolate would you need for that?
So physically, actually, in the mold, 20 chocolates is going to take around 200 grams of chocolate.
Okay.
But when I'm tempering it, I would probably use a kilo of chocolate and add 330 grams into that. So we're starting off with 2/3 of our chocolate and then adding an extra third in.
Yeah, so a kilo and a third, 1.3 kilo. Yeah, is that right? 1.3 kilo of chocolate, but you've just put 30 grams of that, 300 grams of that in your microwave. Yeah. Could you do it in a pan?
No, other way around. A kilo of chocolate is in the microwave.
Kilo in the microwave. Yeah.
I've kept my lovely 330 grams just here.
Yeah.
That's just starting to melt down. It's really important to make sure your chocolate's cut up nice and small. So our chocolate, I'm getting really confused with the camera.
It's like driving a trailer, Finlay. You have to do it the wrong way around.
I'm not very good at driving trailers. Otherwise I would have worked at the fish farm. So the chocolate is chopped up nice and fine. This is actually how we get our chocolate delivered to us in tiny little drops. That's very handy. But that means it's going to melt down nice and evenly. Starting to get there.
And you don't have to add anything because it doesn't burn, or does it burn?
So if you're not careful, it will burn. But that's another reason why we're working with more volume, because if it's lower and slower, you're less likely to get those hot patches where it's burning. Yeah.
So Michelle and Michael, who are obviously cooking along, they say what microwave at what level to melt, and do we need to keep using the thermometer to keep checking the temperature?
Yeah, so it's a very good idea to keep checking the temperature. You don't want to be going over 50 degrees, and I'm just working on full power on the microwave.
So you're living dangerously, yeah?
Living dangerously, that's my invitation showing. So you can either use a probe thermometer, or I don't know whether you've seen these before. These are fantastic. These are just infrared thermometers, so they give you a reading. So my chocolate's at 30 degrees. So if I was feeling lucky, I might just see if I can get all to melt at that temperature. But we're going to play it safe this evening and heat it all up to 45.
Fiona Mackenzie said that's a lot of chocolate. Who gets to lick the bowl?
I'm the only one left here.
And what if you've got no microwave? Can you do it in a pan?
So
Or
I wouldn't
over a
do it
bowl, over
directly in a
water?
pan, but in a bain-marie. So a pan of water with a bowl on top is absolutely fine.
Mhm.
Just as long as make sure not to get any of the water into the chocolate, because water in chocolate can cause it to seize. So it just goes completely
Yeah.
rigid, even if it's warm.
Yeah.
But so we've got lots of lovely, expensive machinery now, but all of that is doing basically what we're doing here.
Yeah, but does it do it faster or more in a more sort of uniform way?
So the biggest advantage to having it in the machine is it keeps it at the right temperature.
Yeah.
Not only does it temper the chocolate, it then maintains it there.
Yeah.
So if you're working with this chocolate, you will have to keep on popping it back in the microwave just to keep it around that 32 degrees.
Yeah.
Whereas the machine is wonderful. It actually takes it, so we don't need to use the seed method for this one. We use that second temperature method. So the machine automatically takes it up to 45. And then once we click temper, it will take it down to 27 and then back up to 30 degrees, or whatever our working temperature is.
Yeah, great. Okay, that's great. I'm conscious of time, Finlay, so we've got another 10 minutes and then we can open up to chat if that sounds doable.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lovely.
We had a videographer doing a new brand video for us in the other day. And I think I probably spent about half an hour literally doing this for him on the camera because he was just so excited about it and trying to get that perfect shot of we went with spatulas, we did wooden spoons, we did whisks, trying all sorts to get that perfect angle.
Brilliant. And can you, the molds, Finlay, can you just get a load of range of different molds anywhere? Where would you suggest?
So the website I was going to give to you all, if anyone's super keen, I'll put it in the chat just now. Well, I'm not sure if I can do that. Can I send it to you, Pauline?
Yeah, send it to me and I'll put it for everyone. Yeah.
So Keylink is fantastic online shop. It does have a decent minimum order, but chocolate making is a very expensive hobby. So you'll probably be able to reach that minimum order no bother. So from there, you can order the type of mold that's brilliant for working with chocolate is a polycarbonate mold. So that's like this, it's completely rigid. And it's got a lovely, if I can show you this, lovely, highly polished inside. I think I might have seen that Lakeland, one of my favorite shops in the world, has started selling some polycarbonate molds, but most of their chocolate making stuff is in silicon. The silicon is fantastic in that it's flexible. So even if your chocolate isn't precisely in temper, you might still be able to get it out of the mold, but it will never give you that shiny finish, and it's a bit of a nightmare to tip it out and tip it back in.
Yeah. So Fiona, I think Fiona is also cooking along. So she said, with the caramel, you just seem to melt the butter and sugar and add salt plus cream and chocolate, then let it cool. There's no boiling or reaching a particular temperature.
No, so you can, this is a lovely simple caramel. This is the only caramel that we use actually. So once that butter and sugar is emulsified together, we just leave it there. If you were making a more traditional caramel, you would maybe heat up your sugar and your probably a little bit of water for a wet caramel, or just sugar for a dry caramel. You would heat it up to that that almost burning point, that point where it goes gold, and then adding in your butter and your cream. that gives you that like really stringy, almost chewy caramel. Whereas what we're going for here is a caramel I much prefer, and it also happens to be much easier to make. But it's just that lovely soft set, that teeth mark caramel.
Yeah, like a fudgy caramel instead of a like on a Twix. Like when you open a Twix, that's got the stringy,
very much,
stringy caramel. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want your stringy caramel, you'll have to heat up your caramel, your sugar, to I think it's like 115 degrees around there. But this is just a really nice simple caramel that works in so many different ways, and because you're not working with that really precise temperature where you're at risk of burning it, it's just much easier to do.
Yeah. So I'm just about to put in the Lakeland link that Catherine Huggett is. Thanks, Catherine. That Catherine's found for chocolate mold. So she's found that as well as the key link one. Great, thank you.
So
we're very helpful members, Finlay. They do all our research for us.
So once your chocolate's heated up to 45 degrees, this is where it requires a little bit of patience. What you want to do is add your third of chocolate. We do a nice video for. Add your third of chocolate. I melted down my kilo. That's me adding my third, so 330 grams. And then we're just going to mix that together until it's reached that 32 degrees that we're after.
You have to be quite thorough in the mixing so you get every bit of it, because obviously if you got a tub with corners like that, then you're going to have corners that are maybe slightly warmer than the other bits, you know.
Lots of going all around.
Yes, lots of that, yeah.
So it does require a little bit of patience. So you need all the bits of chocolate to be melted, and you need it to be around that 30 degrees. If you're mixing it and mixing it and mixing it, and it's gone to sort of 29 degrees and not everything's still melted, you can put it in the microwave briefly, just to heat it up, but do not take it over 33 degrees. If you go over 33 degrees, then you're likely to, it's not like in or out of temper, it just gradually gets less and less uniform in the cocoa butter. But always, if in doubt, just start again. So go back up to 45 and then slowly cool it down with your third of chocolate again. But that does mean
start again. So say that again. So start again with the same chocolate that you're working with.
So say I'm mixing this and mixing this and mixing this, and it's got to 27 degrees, and I think, oh, I'm just going to put it in the microwave a bit more, and then I heat it up too much. If I heat it up to 33 degrees, what I would then do is do a big sigh, and grin, and put this back in the microwave to heat up to 45 degrees and start the process again.
Great.
There's a lovely test to see if your chocolate is in temper. So if you get a palette knife, like so, just dip it into your chocolate and then put that in the fridge. After 2 minutes, it should start to set. So if you remember, one of our characteristics of tempered chocolate is that it's solid at room temperature. So it's going to set much quicker. So as long as it's setting within that 2 minutes, it is in temper. I'm going to take you over to, for the sake of convenience and saving time, I didn't want to have to mix that on camera for you. So we're going to travel over to our tempering machine, and we're going to do a chocolate mold for you.
And what would the shelf life of the caramel be, Finlay, while you're walking?
So caramel, we're probably looking.
Well, we can see Glenshiel in the background now. Yay! Beautiful.
Some lovely dappled sunlight through the trees there. We're probably looking at 3 months, as long as it's stored sealed and in the fridge.
Great.
Let me show you this tempering machine. So if you have your chocolate mold, all you need to do to make some shells to put your caramel in is fill up your mold with chocolate. This can be a messy job. When I first started making chocolates, this was before we all decided that plastic was a bad thing. I would cover the entire kitchen in cling film.
Cling film, yeah.
And just plaster every side.
You just need someone to be under the tap at all times, don't you? I could volunteer for that.
That's very generous of you.
You're not going to take me up on that, are you?
No. Next time you're in Glenshiel, you can get a wee
Yeah, great.
So once you've got your mold filled up with chocolate, you want to give it a wee tap.
Yeah.
Or we have a lovely vibrating table here.
There's a few other takers for being under the tap.
What I'm going to do is get rid of any little air bubbles that have settled
Okay, yeah.
into the mold. And then once you've coated the mold, tip it out. So that's left me, I don't know how well you can see this.
Yeah, we can see it great. Yeah.
That's left me with some lovely shells
Yeah.
with room to put my filling. So then leave this to set in the fridge.
That was very quick. That it took to the mold and then you poured it out and there was some chocolate still there. So do you have to be fairly quick on that move, or
It depends what temperature your molds are. And depends what thickness of shell you're after. I actually like quite a thick shell. So I like to be able to taste the chocolate in my chocolates. But if it's always do it quicker, and if it's not thick enough, then you can just fill it up with chocolate again and pour it back out.
Yeah, and it won't go in two different layers.
No.
So Caitlin has asked, if I don't have a mold, should I use a tray?
So you could get very creative and use anything that you like, as long as you're going to be able to get the chocolate out of it afterwards.
So fruit, for example, you can pour chocolate over fruit, can't you? And then you end up with a bowl. Yeah,
absolutely. Or if you're lining things with greaseproof paper or cling film, that should mean that you can get the chocolate out of it. But in order to get that lovely shine, you do want a polycarbonate mold. So that's going to give you that lovely, smooth, polished surface.
Yeah.
So then I'll maybe move this down here. Move down here again. So I'm sure that makes an awful sound every time.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We can't hear anything. It's fine.
No. So I've got this lovely salted caramel we made earlier in my piping bag. This proper Blue Peter moment of here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah.
So when I'm filling up the molds, we want to just be filling just a little bit below the surface. So I don't know how.
Yeah, so that looks like sort of 3/4 full, yeah?
Yeah, so any room left is going to be our chocolate base. So depending on how thick you want the base to be, leave enough room for that. But you should be able to look down the side of the mold there and not see any caramel overlapping. If you've got caramel overlapping, then that's going to interfere with your seal of the chocolate that we're going to put on this.
Yeah. And Michael has asked, are you cooling it in the fridge or at room temperature?
So we use a fridge. That's just to give it a quick, short blast of coolness. But like I said earlier, you wouldn't want to store your chocolate in the fridge for too long. But just to help it set initially, that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's my mold filled up with chocolate. And normally we would leave that to set in the fridge. But for the sake of expedience, we're going to go back.
How long would you leave it to set then, roughly?
Just until it's set.
That's very helpful, thank you.
So all you want it to do is just to be able to support that chocolate without squidging out the sides.
Yeah. So is that like a an hour or 20 minutes or
So
overnight?
we normally end up leaving them about half an hour, I would say.
Yeah, great. Okay, cool.
So back here, again, just exactly the same, apart from we're not going to pour it out this time.
Yeah.
The other thing to bear in mind when you're leaving your caramel to set is to make sure that your shells have completely set. If you remember, one of our tempered chocolate characteristics is that it's going to retract slightly as it sets.
Yes.
So if I go ahead and seal the box before the shell has finished retracting, when the shell retracts, it's going to squeeze a wee hole. So we're going to get cracks and the caramel's going to come out of it. We want to make sure that initial shell is nicely set before we're sealing the box.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
You want the seal on the shell, not on the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, in true Blue Peter style,
Here's one you made earlier.
here's one I made earlier. This is probably my favorite part of making the chocolates. My favorite moment in the whole process is researching new flavors and coming up with new ideas. But in the chocolate making process, this is the real test of whether your chocolate's in temper. So firstly, you want to give the mold a wee wiggle. That's just going to make sure that it's not stuck at any point. And then just a nice clean.
Oh, nice.
Hey!
Hey, well done.
That gives us a lovely
lovely.
filled chocolates.
Lovely. They look fab.
They look so good.
So salted caramel is a real favorite of mine. That's good. So in our range, we actually have an entire box devoted to Isle of Skye sea salt caramel.
Great.
So that's one of the boxes we do. And then it's in both our local selection. This is like our mixed box. So this is some of my favorites from throughout our range. We've got the salted caramel. We've got the Skye whiskey, elderflower gin, locally roasted coffee, and heather honey and raspberry. We've got a box with all of our different whiskey ones, a box with all of our different gin ones. Our classic selection is like a mixture without alcohol. So that's got the same as the local, apart from a Dundee marmalade
Nice.
and a ginger one in there. And then last but not least is our vegan selection. So there's nothing actually funny vegan, if you know what I mean, in these. All we've done with these ones is taken dark chocolate, which is naturally dairy-free, and we've used water-based ganache. So that instead of using cream, a ganache is just a mixture of chocolate and liquid.
Yeah.
So you get that soft set on a chocolate. So instead of using chocolate and cream, we've used chocolate and a demerara syrup. So you get that lovely molasses flavor in it as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
I think that's so.
Michelle said, can you ship to the US in case she has an epic fail?
I have faith in you. You can definitely do it. You don't need me to send you chocolates. No, we don't do delivery to the States yet. Particularly since we've opened our, I've not actually told you where Glenshiel is. Inside our chocolate bars, that's one of the most common questions we get. Where is Glenshiel? Inside all of our chocolate bars,
Oh, that's nice.
there's a lovely wee map that shows you exactly where we are. So this is, sorry, I'm never going to get used to this camera. This is our wee bridge over to Skye and the Glenelg ferry. We're just about half an hour before there in Northwest Highlands of Scotland.
It's a beautiful spot. I've been there quite a few times. Absolutely gorgeous. Lots of things to see and do.
Yes. But since we've opened our cafe, we've had so many American tourists. It's been lovely to have our American tourists back. And all of them have been asking, emailing us after, please, can I get this? So
Mhm.
it's something we're working.
Working on. Yeah. Great. Great.
At
Should
the
we
end-
open it up to questions? now,
Absolutely.
Finlay? Are you ready for questions?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
let's go for it.
How quickly do things come back online? Someone's asked it if they go out of stock. I mean, you must be kind of hostage to your own fortune, really. There, yeah.
So May was a mental month for us this year. So we have been working our socks off.
Yeah.
I was supposed to, before we booked this evening doing demonstration, I was supposed to be in production. We started doing an evening shift, which has actually been really nice. I managed to get out cutting my grass this morning, and then I started work at 1:30, and then I'm working till 8:30.
Yes.
So we are working very hard on getting things back in stock. Our chocolate table in the shop finally has everything in it. So I'm expecting we'll be back in stock everything next week. But we have an option on the website to notify me when something's back in stock.
Great. And what's your most popular chocolate?
So probably our salted caramel and hazelnut bar.
Nice.
So this is a milk chocolate with the Isle of Skye sea salt in it. This is a proper salty bar. So that lovely sweet salty with the milk chocolate. And then you've got that lovely nutty roast caramelized hazelnut flavor to it as well. Salted caramel and hazelnut, or our dark chocolate, and I feel like all I'm doing is talking about the sea salt. Dark chocolate and Skye sea salt. That's a really, really nice bar. Made with a very fruity dark chocolate. So it's 72%, but it's not bitter at all. It's just lovely fruity flavors. And we don't grind up the salt. So most salt bars you'll buy in the shops, the salt is ground up in it, whereas we leave it in the whole crystals. So you just get a wee burst of it every so often, kind of like popping candy.
Yeah.
All the way through the bar, you're getting wee bursts of salt.
Yeah. Jackie has asked, do you have coffee creams? Because she finds it very hard to get coffee creams.
It is very hard to get coffee creams. So we do, as part of our classic and local selection, we have Highland Roast coffee chocolate that is very similar to a coffee cream. The difference being, instead of using an instant coffee to make it, we use the coffee roasted in Inverness. We grind down. All of our chocolate's very simple. I think that probably stems from being self-taught and just watching YouTube. All the flavors and things we use are really simple. So to get the coffee flavor, we've just ground down those coffee beans as finely as we can and left it inside the chocolate. So you get that real hit of coffee flavor without it being an instant coffee flavor. Gorgeous.
And is that artisan's coffee that you use then from the artisans?
Inverness coffee roasting company.
So it's artisan. Great.
There's Kevin.
They're a social enterprise, which is very important. A really nice organisation, artisans. Jackie said hip hip hooray, so well done, you've answered that one. And Will has said, any suggestions as to what's to do with the caramel, and as the ingredients list didn't have the chocolate in it, so he's made lovely caramel, but now he doesn't have any chocolate to put in it. So what should he do with that lovely caramel he's made? Could he could leave it in the fridge, couldn't he, until he's got chocolate?
So this will keep for 3 months. So if you're up for the challenge, you can go out to the shops or go on to Keylink and buy yourself some chocolate to make chocolates at home. But the caramel will work in so many different things. So you could use it on top of ice cream. It's probably the easiest and maybe the most delicious use for it. On top of a cake. You could use it in cocktail making, in milkshakes. It is very versatile. You can have it by the spoonful.
Great. That sounds dangerous. Okay. Has anyone else wanted to ask any questions before we let Finlay go and eat some of his lovely wares? I should just say that this recording will go onto our YouTube channel, which is we're on YouTube, Scottish Women's Institute's TV. because one of our lovely ladies members said it was like she enjoyed being on TV with everybody else, so that's really nice. So that's why it's called that. So if it will go on Scottish Women's Institute's TV on YouTube in the next week or so, and you'll be able to see it there, and all of our other sessions that we've done with lots of other people around Scotland. So that's that, and I'm just going to put I'm going to ask Charlotte maybe to say thank you to Finlay, and I'll put some information in the chat about where to find links to Finlay's website and his contact details for the chocolate firm anyway, not maybe your personal contact details, Finlay, but your wife might have a wee problem with that one, yeah. And
something I've asked Pauline to give out to you all is our contact us link. That's got an option to sign up to our newsletter.
Great.
So we only send one out, I think we do once a month, so we'll not end up in your inbox too long. But that's just basically to hear our news, what's going on, what new things we're cooking up in the kitchen. We've got a lovely seasonal collection that we've been releasing every season, funnily enough, that we've been having lots of fun. So if you want to stay in touch, that's the best way, and we'll let you know as soon as we're posting to the States. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Finlay. I'm just going to pass over to Charlotte, and she can thank you on everyone's behalf. And then I'll ask everyone to just unmute once Charlotte's spoken, and then we can give Finlay a little round of applause at the end in a traditional way. All right. Thanks, Charlotte.
Just to say thank you so much from all of us for donating your time and being so informative and smiley and lovely and promoting your brand. And I hope everybody buys a box of chocolates off you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. If everyone wants to unmute themselves.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we can show our appreciation.
Thank you, Finlay.
So much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.